Hello, 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 and welcome back to Visibility with Video, where every week we uncover the secrets of the universe when it comes to all things video marketing. Hi there, guys. I am Jenny Waterier, our team's podcasting expert.
I'm Marie, visibility strategist.
And I'm Josh, the YouTube marketing expert.
And for those of you who have been watching the show for we only have I think we're on episode 8 now, so not that long. But for those of you who have been keeping up with us, you know the general format. Person in the big box, which is me today, is our host. And the other two have no idea what I'm going to be talking about today. So This is very exciting, very fun. And today's going to be extra fun because we also, all three of us, absolutely adore and geek out over statistics. We are numbers people. We love looking at just fun, blow your mind kind of stats. And guess what, guys? That is all that today is.
Yeah.
So I have come here with a collection of some stats that I was reading this week about podcasting in demographic stats from this past year as well as this 2023 that we were coming into, and they just absolutely were blowing my mind. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to pull a bunch of them together and we're going to talk about them.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Awesome.
All right, so first off, we're going to start off with a stat about how much podcasting not only has been growing but is continuing to grow. Okay, as of the end of 2022, there were 464 million podcast listeners globally as of beginning of 2023. And by the end of 2024, they expect that to hit over 500 million podcast listeners globally. 500 million people that are regularly tuning into podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So not only do I want to talk about the stats tonight, but also about what this means for people in the podcasting sphere. So that one's pretty obvious though. It means there's so many people coming into it. I read a mini one that I didn't actually stick in here, but I thought was really interesting. And I think it was in 2006, only 20% of people knew what podcasting was at all. And now it's 78% of the world's population at least knows what a podcast is.
Well, and podcasting is really kind of morphing into be, what people want. So it's kind of changing. It's dynamic in a lot of ways. So what people, used to think of as podcasting, still there, still active, still growing, but so much more to it these days that people are beginning to tune into. So yeah. I can believe it, but that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why podcasting is becoming so popular is because a lot more people nowadays are putting a lot more focus into multitasking because we just don't have that much time, or at least it doesn't feel like we have enough time to do everything.
Yeah.
So I know, for instance, with me, there are a lot of tasks that I do throughout the week, even if it's just washing the dishes, that it seems like it goes by a lot faster if I'm listening to something. And if there's a certain topic that I'm already trying to learn, then it's just you get two things done at the same time. I can go and be doing the responsibilities and things that I need to be doing regularly. But at the same time, I'm learning, I'm making myself better, I'm growing, or just listening to things that are really entertaining and fun to keep me entertained as I'm doing all of those things. So I feel like as a culture, we're kind of switching more into that mode of we have so much stuff to do, so let's get as much of it done at the same time as we can. Yep. And podcasting just makes that really easy.
Yep, absolutely. And I threw this in because I was 500 million people, that's a big number, but I don't know how to quantify that number in my head because it is so big. So I looked up, just as an example, the United States population is 333 million people. So by the end of 2024, there's going to be 200 million more people listening to podcasts than the entirety of the population of the United States, which is huge.
So if you think people aren't listening to podcast content, think again.
Exactly. Think again. All right, next one I want to bring up, which makes sense, and also I was like, oh my god, wait, really? 82% of podcast listeners spend upwards of 7 hours a week listening to podcasts.
Also, something that I am not surprised on at all.
Yeah.
Because, again, going back to the multitasking thing,
Mm-hmm.
if there are a lot of jobs that you're doing that are just kind of repetitive and you don't really need to think on them, then that is a perfect opportunity to be listening to podcasts while you're doing it. Either to just entertain you and make the process go faster, or like I said earlier, if you're trying to learn new things, that is just a great opportunity. And also, there are so many really great podcasts out there, not only in the informational sphere, but there are also just lots of really great storytelling podcasts that can get you really hooked on them. And just like a TV show, make you just crave to see the next episode. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all that people who are listening to podcasts listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah,
and it
that's
also.
actually. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's an exciting trend for business owners to be thinking about too. Just because if people are listening to more of that content longer, you can see statistics are proving they're listening to more of that content, then what a great opportunity to get your voice heard by people. You know, if you're creating interesting content that people want to just listen to for hours at a time, then what a great opportunity to really connect with your audience. So.
Yeah, and this one stuck out to me in two ways. Not only one, does that mean they are like super engaged with the content that they are listening to come and spend 7+ hours of their week, and that's 82% of podcast listeners spend upwards of 7 hours. So not only is it that they're engaged with their content, but it shows the amount of different podcasts that they are listening to in a given week. Because, yeah, some of that is going to be catching up on old episodes. Maybe they find a new podcast. But podcast episodes are on average like 30-ish minutes. Some may go up to an hour. But for people to regularly be spending more than 7 hours a week listening to podcasts just shows like the variety. So if you say, oh, the market is too saturated for podcasts right now, there's no reason I need to do it. It's like, but you can see the statistics show people are listening to a bunch of different podcasts all at the same time and regularly keeping up with them.
Yeah, and just talking about the different kinds, and just a side note real quick, but I saw somebody this week that was promoting their podcast, and it's a 1-minute podcast.
Really?
1-minute podcast. And they invite guest speakers to come on to their podcast.
Interesting.
In 1 minute. So, yeah. Imagine, I mean, it's going to have to be like really good little nuggets of information you're going to get in that 1 minute. So imagine if you binge watch that for 30 minutes, man, you'd be like, pow, pow, pow. So much powerful information coming at you really quick. So,
yeah. And that's one of the things that I love about podcasting is you really can make it whatever you want it to be. You can make it about whatever topic you want it to be, and you can also make it how long you want it to be. There are some people that do 3 or 4 hour podcasts, and there are some people who do 5-minute podcasts, and all of them work because there are people interested in all of that type of stuff. So it's really is a matter. Of course, you want to do some researching ahead of time and make sure that your target audience is interested in the type of podcast you're going to create. But overall, if you want to create a podcast on something, there is an audience of people who would be interested out there and who would like to watch your podcast.
All right, moving on. This one did not surprise me at all, but I also thought it was really cool and a really good point to bring up, and I thought could bring up some good conversation. 52% of podcast subscribers listen to the entire episode. The whole thing.
That's a good number.
50%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 52%. Just imagine if we got 52% of people that watched our YouTube videos to watch the entire thing, I would be ecstatic. I would be so happy. That's not a thing that happens with a typical YouTube video, just because of the way people think about those kinds of videos. And that's not necessarily a horrible thing, but the fact that this audience is already geared towards watching the entire episode is just going to do absolute wonders for your numbers. And not only do they listen to just entire episodes, but they typically listen to multiple episodes back to back, because as Josh was talking about earlier, people will turn it on in the background so they can be learning something new as they're folding their laundry, as they're driving to work, as they're washing their dishes. People will put it on in the background and just let it keep going, let it keep playing as they're doing the tasks that they have to do.
Yeah, and with the watch length, it really just comes down to expectations. What are they expecting? What is the audience expecting when they come into that? And that's one of the reasons why it's really hard to get good watch time on a regular YouTube video, because most of the time when people, especially for an informational YouTube video, when people come into it, they are expecting a quick solution to a problem. And so if you don't provide a solution to their problem quickly, then they'll go to find someone else who can give them a quicker solution to their problem. But when it comes to a podcast, most of the people who listen to podcasts to get information are not looking for a quick fix to the problem. They're looking for an in-depth explanation of the problem.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're willing to stay longer. They're willing to listen through more. They're willing to endure more mistakes, more things that would have made them immediately leave a YouTube video. But they understand this is a longer form of content. They understand this is more raw. And so they're willing to stay through all of that to get a much more in-depth look at the topic that they're talking about. And because of that, that's why it's very easy to get people to stay longer in podcasts, because most of the time when they come to a podcast, they're expecting to stay all the way through the episode. And it's only if something really, like if there's something in there that makes them realize this really just isn't the topic that I'm looking for, or something about this is really bothering me, unless that happens, most of the time they'll stay all the way through the video.
Yeah, to me, it's really like the difference between a commercial and the TV show that you're trying to watch. You know, you set aside time to watch the TV show because you want to watch it, and you're not, tempted to be running, leaving the second you start into your TV show. You're there to enjoy it for the full time that it's going to be on, and you even endure the commercials that come in between because you want to keep going on your show. Versus, the quick things that pop on and you literally evaluate within 2 to 3 seconds whether that has any value to you, or do you need to take this opportunity to go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, and get back ready for your show, or just skip it. Yeah.
Yep. Which actually kind of segues into the next one pretty well, talking about TV ads and commercials. More than half of US podcast listeners say they actually pay attention to the ads in the podcast. Which I can say, hey, I will call myself out right here, right now. I am 100% guilty of watching a YouTube video, and they'll be like, and now here's a little word from my sponsor, and I'm like, skip.
Yes.
Fast forward
exactly.
like 3 minutes. Okay, let's get into it. But podcast listeners not only don't, of course, it's more than half of podcast listeners, it says, don't skip the ads, but also pay attention to the ads. And that part of that comes down to just that better connection that they get with you when listening to a longer form piece of content like a podcast that's typically very raw, very real, just you talking to them. They build this much better sense of connection with you, and they're willing to listen to just about anything you have to tell them, even if it's something you're trying to sell them.
Well, if they're spending this much time listening to your content, they're already opting into your world. So if it comes to you, if the ad is something that you're pushing, you're selling, you're offering, then they're already likely to be interested because they're already hungry for what you're pushing, or they wouldn't be there listening. If they weren't into your world. It's like, so many YouTube shows can sell merch stuff because people are into that world. They feel like they belong there. It's an easy sale. So
yeah,
but that's an encouraging stat.
Yeah, and it feels like it's coming from someone that you trust. If you have listened to
Exactly.
someone for a really long time, even though you don't, I mean, sometimes people think this, but most people don't think in their head, oh, yeah, like I really trust that person. Oh, yeah, they're like a friend to me, talking about
Yeah.
someone on YouTube or someone on a podcast. You don't say that, but science has proven that that's actually what happens psychologically. If you spend time listening to someone, a lot of time listening to someone, you start to build a connection with them and you start to feel like, well, they haven't done anything wrong to me so far, so I can trust them. I know them. I know their personality. I know how they talk. I know how they act. I can trust this person, even though you've never met them physically at all in your life. But so then when they come and they give you an offer, is like, hey, I've heard about this thing. I've tried it. It works really well. If you have this problem, you should get this. Then it does the same thing in our head as if one of our close friends comes over and says, hey, I know you're struggling with this problem, and I have
Mhm.
a solution right here. I worked with this person and they fix my problem perfectly. They'll do it for you. And when you hear the person on the podcast that you've been listening to for a while give an offer, it does the same thing. And you're like, oh, you start to consider it as if it was a referral from a friend, even though
Mhm.
you're not consciously thinking, oh, this is a friend. But subconsciously, that has been triggered, and that makes it much more likely for you to consider those and go through with them.
Absolutely. And this last one absolutely was like mind-boggling to me. Just when you take a step back and think about it. It says 60% of podcast listeners have bought something that they heard about on a podcast ad.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just everybody listening, I want you to stop and think for a second. Imagine if 60% of your audience bought something from you. Imagine us if 60% of our YouTube subscribers just suddenly up and bought something from us.
We would no longer need to run a YouTube channel. So, like, at that point,
Like,
No, we
that
would
is
make the next
insane.
video. That's what we would do.
yeah.
That is just, yeah. So whether that's like specifically buying one of your products or services, or if it's just affiliate sales that you do on your podcast, like having 60% buy something from you is insane ROI just for
Mhm.
starting and hosting and keeping up with and engaging on a podcast.
Yeah. And a kind of funny story with me when it comes to this kind of thing is it's always been interesting with me since I became a marketer and started researching marketing. I have a very analytical brain. So when I see someone marketing to me now, I can tell that they're marketing to me. And it's funny, since that has happened, there's kind of been a switch that's flipped in my head where if I can tell someone's marketing to me, I never buy from them. Just like, period. I don't know why that's the case. But that is not true when I listen to podcasts. That is something that I've noticed. If someone sells to me on a YouTube video or on a Facebook ad or on TV, anything like that, I don't even consider it because it's just like, oh, they're just trying to sell me on this. Oh, they're marketing to me. I can see what they're doing to try and manipulate me. I'm not going to do it. But if I have been listening to a podcast for a while and someone on the podcast gives an offer, all of a sudden I start realizing, wait, I'm actually considering this. Why am I considering this? And it's because, again, I feel like I can trust that person and I feel like they have my best interest in mind when they offer this to me. So it helps me to move past that barrier of, oh, they're just trying to sell to me, and start to actually look at it to say, is this something that I think would help me? And because of that, yes, I have bought things off of podcasts in the past.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Josh,
and I think
the truth is that it's not that you wouldn't buy from a YouTube video or from any other outlet. I think you just haven't gone on a journey with that person yet. You don't have a customer journey with them that has, got that, that trust factor built, or even that awareness factor built, So it's just really important to think about how much podcasting affects that customer journey and how much faster people move down that journey opposed to other kinds of content. Like, I think it takes a lot more of other kinds of content to form that same kind of connection that you get from podcasting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like it's part the connection that's built, it's part the customer journey that they're going along with, and it's also part that the like reverse connection, the connection that the podcaster creates with their audience, because the audience becomes super engaged, like hyper engaged, commenting on all of this stuff, and then the podcaster can be like, oh, okay, I know the exact kind of people that are listening, because they have that clear-cut engagement with them. They're like, okay, I know exactly the kind of people that are listening. I know that they will want, like, that what this sponsor has is something they'll want. I know that I have this product that's something that they'll want. And so they have the ability to like tailor things better to their audience because the audience engages so heavily with them.
Yeah, it's a really good viewpoint.
Yeah, and that is something to consider when you have your own podcast. If you take any sponsors, you really need to consider, is this actually something that my audience would be interested in? Because if you keep offering things to them that obviously they don't need, then you will start to lose that trust because you keep trying to sell them things they don't even want. And keep this in mind when you're trying to sell your own stuff on a podcast as well, is that if you go into your podcast knowing what thing you want to sell, what product from your business you're going to sell to them, you really should try and tailor your podcast to attract those people. Because a lot of people, when they think of creating a podcast, will say, hey, this is something I know really well. This is something I want to make a podcast on. Let's go for it. And thinking, well, later, whenever I build up a big audience, I'll start selling them my products and services. But the problem is not everything that you know a lot about will attract the people who are interested in the things you want to sell. So if you start out by thinking, okay, what's the thing that I want to sell? What's the thing I want to market and get people to buy from this podcast? And then you can start thinking, who are those people that are interested in that? Who are the people that will buy? And what podcast would they listen to? What is something that I can create that would attract them? Because once they are attracted, then I'm able to sell them my stuff. But if you just go based off of what things you know, you may end up attracting a really large following that will never buy anything that you have to sell.
And I will add one extra little thing in there. It needs to not only be something that you know enough about to make a podcast that your audience, your ideal audience would want to listen to, but it also has to be something that you will have fun with. Because, and I know people are like, oh my God, marketing and fun, those don't coexist. Yes, they do. Because here's the thing. Here's the bottom line. If you don't have fun with your marketing, with your podcasting, with your YouTube channel, with your whatever, you're not going to do it. It's going to become a chore. You're not going to create great content because you're just doing it just to do it. And then nothing's going to happen from it and you're going to get frustrated. So if you're not having fun with it, if it's not an outlet that you will be able to enjoy creating content through, then you need to take a step back and like relook at it.
Yeah, and have a conversation with us, because it's not the only way to market your business.
Yeah.
But it should, so many avenues, so many different ways that should be aligned to you, exactly who you are. So yeah, that's great, Jenny. And I'm just excited about the future of podcasting and video podcasting, and that these numbers are continuing to rise like we've been seeing them do. Because we've always known podcasting was a great way to connect with your audience. And the fact that more and more people are enjoying those connections, it just, for one thing, it shows me that people are still hungry for connection, which is, in our favor as entrepreneurs, because we're really trying to form those connections and people are hungry for it. It'll keep them coming back. Just keep producing amazing content. That's the key.
Yeah,
absolutely. So that is all I have for you tonight. Thank you guys for hanging out with me, and thank you too for helping in the commentary. So as always, we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.